Welcome back to the PFF NFL podcast. This is your Week 11 preview, part 2. We apologize for the stream issues.
Shows are now so long that we have an intermission.
Oh, that's what we really should do. You know, in Japan, Japanese baseball,
this is really going to help speed the process along.
They have a smoke break.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Smoke break.
Players just, smoke butts.
Huh.
Like the 7th inning or something, 7th inning stretch, a little intermission. So we might have an intermission here. So tell all your friends we're back. We're going to make you hit the thumbs up again, make you start chatting again. But we're going to finish the rest of the show. Yeah. I like the people who theorized that because I picked the Raiders, Tuanon stepped in and shut the stream down.
Shut it down.
Because I picked the Raiders merely to cover, not to win, just to cover. But where we left off in our Week 11 preview was, ready? The New York Giants at the Washington Commanders. Commanders favored by 9. Last time we talked about this game a few weeks back, I called it a sack fest, Sam.
Sack off?
Sack fest, I believe.
You call it a sack fest. I believe the term sack off is better.
To each their own, I guess. And it was Sam Howell and was it Tyrod in that game? Or was Daniel Jones back? It was Tyrod, I think. They both got sacked a ton. And Washington's favored by 9, though, in this game at home against Tommy DeVito and the Giants. DeVito actually missed some practice reps yesterday.
Who's next up?
Barkley.
Barkley?
Matt Barkley.
Okay. Right, rather than Saquon.
Not Saquon. Could have a Barkley and Barkley backfield here. We'll see what happens with practice today. We don't have the practice reports yet. But either way, the Giants are not looking good as a football team this year.
Yeah. Barkley, that would be like a law firm, right? Barkley and Barkley?
Barkley and Barkley, yeah. Anytime you put 2 or 3 names together, you can say it's
three names usually a law firm, but sometimes like Johnson & Johnson is a pharmaceutical company, right?
True.
They could be anything, but Barkley and Barkley actually sounds like a law firm rather than anything else that it might be.
Like Ben Jarvis Green Ellis.
That's a law firm.
Who was called
right.
the law firm.
Yeah.
That was his nickname.
Anyway.
What are we looking for in this one? Of course, Sam Howell, a guy we like to talk about every single week.
Yeah, and in fact, 10 minutes ago, before the stream died.
We did have this conversation 10 minutes ago before the stream died, and it didn't record, so we're going to have it again. Sam Howell playing a little better football these last few weeks.
I love watching Sam Howell. I think he's one of the most fun quarterbacks in the NFL, and unlike some of the previous fun quarterbacks in the NFL, he's actually good as well. He leads the NFL in big-time throw rate. Even if you look at big-time throws. If you look at big-time throw rate, because obviously he's passed a lot, he's still, I think, 7th, was it? Top 10 anyway. He doesn't turn the ball over that much. And the thing that was his biggest flaw, the sacks, he is a sack magnet. He's getting better at that. It's not good, but he's no longer like the most atrocious sack attractive force the game has ever known, right? We're moving in the right direction there. So if that part continues to move in his direction and improve, everything else about his game I think is fun to watch and stays constant, stays good even when he's in tough situations, right? When they're in hurry-up offense or no huddle or they've got to pass, they're in must-have-it type situations. That's when he plays some of his best football. So huge credit to Howell himself. Huge credit to Ron Rivera for saying this guy's going to be our quarterback, even when it looked crazy. And huge credit to Eric Bieniemy for crafting the offense around him.
On the other side, I think any given week with the Giants, Kayvon Thibodeau had a really big game against Washington last time around. Any given week, Dexter Lawrence can go off and kind of explode opposing offensive game plans. The Giants, they got destroyed by the Cowboys last week on both sides of the ball. We kind of expected it on the offensive side, but on the Giants' defense, they've been kind of hit or miss this year, but they're tough to peg because the blitz-heavy scheme, the volatility, having a Dexter Lawrence in the middle, Dexter Lawrence being one of one as a nose tackle that can implode opposing passing games. You just never know when that's going to show up. But this does look, there's a reason why the Commanders are favored by 9 here. And I think most of it is going to be because Tommy DeVito behind that Giants offensive line, there's not much to do there.
No. The Dexter Lawrence thing is like critics of Dexter Lawrence, of which there are still some, have pointed out that a huge volume of his production this year has come against very bad players, even if he was part of the reason the very bad players are on the field in the first place. Washington has some not very good players on the interior of that offensive line, so it is a spot where Dexter Lawrence could absolutely go nuts, dominate. Last time against Washington, he had 8 pressures, which is his second highest figure of the season. So it's the kind of game where Dexter Lawrence could show up and, single-handedly ruin the game for you if you're Washington. But basically, like outside of that, that's the only way they don't win this game fairly comfortably, right? Is if Dexter Lawrence just goes nuts and crushes the line of scrimmage.
If you are a Giants fan, you're just looking for any kind of signs of life here, right? You're 2-8. They're on a collision course with the Patriots the following week. You don't want to look ahead to the 2-8 versus 2-8 battle against the Patriots the following week with a potential.
Because it would depress you?
I'm just saying you have a potential, number 1 or 2 draft pick on the line when you play New England in a couple weeks. You don't want to look ahead if you're the Giants. But yeah, it's interesting times for both coaching staffs too. The Giants, have they lost all of the goodwill that they built up? Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen, in that front office. Have they lost all the goodwill of year one with how bad it's been this year? And then is Ron Rivera just a lame duck coach because you've got new ownership ready to turn the whole thing over and get his people in there? So yeah, storyline wise, that's what's on the line, I think, in this game. Ron Rivera kind of trying to, both coaching staffs, I think, maybe playing for their jobs or just playing for a little more credibility within that front office.
Yeah, the Giants are in a tough spot because obviously they've run out of quarterbacks. They're playing Tommy DeVito, if not Barkley and Barkley. So they're just trying to survive, right? Just get to the next game, just try and not be embarrassed, basically, week upon week. Washington are in a slightly different spot. They haven't been bad, and they've lost a couple of really close games or heartbreakers that, like, they could be in playoff contention, but they're not because of, a couple of games here or there where they've actually been really close. So, it's the type of game I think that Washington should be winning fairly comfortably, but they have shot themselves in the foot a few times this year.
All right, man. 9 points for Washington. Where are you going here?
9 is a lot, even with Tommy DeVito as the quarterback. I think the Giants will lose, but I think they might keep it closer than 9.
All right, give me the Commanders to cover. DeVito showed a little bit of life last week, but
yeah, he hasn't been terrible.
Yeah,
like it's a totally terrible situation. Like arguably the worst offensive line in the NFL. Not much in terms of receiver help. Nothing's there, right? And yet he hasn't looked like the worst quarterback in the NFL.
All right, let's go to Green Bay. They're hosting the Chargers. Chargers favored by 3 on the road here. Packers coming off a loss to the Steelers last week. And Chargers had their heartbreaker against the Lions. They could not stop Detroit the entire game. Interesting battle here because Herbert's coming off of his best game, I think, for the Chargers. And Jordan Love coming off of his best game with the Packers. 5 big-time throws. They just got, stopped in the red zone. 1 out of 5 in the red zone last week. So some positivity for Green Bay last week, even though I think their run defense had one of their worst games of the season.
It did, yeah. I thought Jordan Love played well last week. Like, if that was kind of the version of Jordan Love I think we were expecting, given everything you knew about him before this season. Like, a lot of big-time throws in that game last week against Pittsburgh. Some of them were rewarded, some of them were not. But, and there was a mistake or two in there as well. So, but that was kind of and despite the big-time throws, there was still like just a basic level of inaccuracy with the football. Like, his ball location on the average pass is as bad as any quarterback I can remember in recent times. Like, even passes that are complete, even big-time throws, the ball location isn't good. Like,
well, they shouldn't be charted as big-time throws if the ball location's that bad, I hope.
Yeah, there's enough space that it's probably still – anyway, he threw a deep touchdown to Jaden Reed, right, last week. And that ball was probably 2 yards off where it should have been. Like, Reed had to slow down, back up the DB to give himself the space to still catch it and be able to get the touchdown. It's 2 yards off where it needed to be. There was a shot to Luke Musgrave on a seam. Again, like, the location is just like 2 yards away from where it's supposed to be. There's enough space and enough time that he can adjust, and it ends up being a big first down for them anyway. But, like, it's actually amazing how far off he is on some of these passes. That's what's killing him at the moment. Like, up until last week, he hadn't really shown the big plays either. Last week, there was some big throws in there, but that basic level of inaccuracy is just putting a cap on how good this entire offense can be, because every throw, you're making it harder than it needs to be, right? Even if you're completing it, you're halting yards after the catch, or you're inviting DBs to make it contested or whatever. And that's before you get to the ones where your inaccuracy is bad enough that they're no longer completions. Like, you're missing throws because of that inaccuracy. So, if you get last week's version of Jordan Love, the Chargers defense is a great get-right spot for any offense right now, but that basic level of inaccuracy is not going anywhere for him.
Remember the Chargers last week, and I know the Lions offense, they're very good. They've been shut down a few times over the last couple of years, but they get into those grooves, and you highlighted very well on the Monday show, Ben Johnson in that groove for Detroit against the Chargers. They didn't have an answer for anything. Run game, pass game. When they finally did try to commit more people to the run, they get torched through the air. So it is an opportunity, as you mentioned, for the Packers to maybe build on what they did last week. Packers just have to figure out a way to get the ball in the end zone. If they keep moving the ball the way they did, 388 yards last week, because that's what they do. That's what teams do against the Steelers. But yeah, I'll be keeping an eye on basically the Chargers for the rest of the season here. Brandon Staley, I think, fighting for his life here as the head coach of the Chargers. A tough one last week, but this is one that they need. You can't fall any further behind. The Raiders right now are officially in second place in the AFC West.
Right. It's like a litmus test in the bad direction for the Chargers. Like, if your defense can't slow down the Packers offense, how bad is it? Like, that's not good.
I just wonder if for the Packers, remember last year Christian Watson had this turning point?
Yep.
We had a listener predict week 9 or whatever it was that he would be the best receiver, and it was almost to a T, where he became uber deep threat. Very promising end to his rookie season, even though he's been inconsistent this year and is not a well-rounded receiver. But was this a tipping point for the Packers and all of the young playmakers that we've been citing this year, that they're going to just start getting better? Because there's a world here where the Packers finish strong offensively for the rest of the year, and it's like, all right, we feel good about Jordan Love. We feel good about these young pass catchers. Might want to add more to the mix, but something to build on for the rest of the year. And if you're the Chargers, I mean, all you have to do is stack wins. I mean, that's the only answer here. There's a lot of talent, both sides of the ball. I'd still like to see more people emerge beyond Keenan Allen. You need to see Quentin Johnston be a little bit more consistent, catch the ball. He actually caught a couple passes last week. They need more from him. And, Chargers, man, sitting here at 4-5, disappointing us once again. The latest rumor, we're going to have a lot of these. Mm-hmm. This is going to be Bill Belichick's next spot.
Everywhere is going to be Bill Belichick's next spot.
He's going to Washington. He's going to the Chargers. Going to the Giants.
Dano was out there saying he knows where it's going to be, but he's not telling anyone.
Yeah.
Hate that.
Yeah.
Hate that is the thing.
All right, so what are we looking at in this game? +3, Green Bay.
Yeah, I mean,
where are you leaning?
I think Green Bay, I think their offense is going to have success. I think the Chargers, remember, we wondered if their pass rush was back or if they just run up against bad players. Well, their pass rush was nowhere last week. So I think the Packers' offense is going to have success. Then it's a case of what their defense can do, which is banged up a bit at the moment against the Chargers' offense. Green Bay underdogs by 3. I will go for Green Bay covering that.
Yeah, I'll take Green Bay as the home underdogs here as well. I think despite scoring 19 points last week, I am optimistic that the offense can continue to improve here. Let's go Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions. What's the spread here?
Fields
Lions
back.
by 7.5. Justin Fields is back.
Mm-hmm. And they're still 7.5 point dogs.
Still 7.5 point underdogs. So broken thumb.
Did the line move when he came back?
I'm not sure.
That would be a tough blow to the ego.
Fields is better than Bagent.
Does the man in Vegas agree, though?
Justin Fields is better than Tyson Bagent.
Man, I don't know.
So Lions by 7.5. It's in the Dome. Lions are going to come back again in the Dome Thanksgiving to play Green Bay next week. So back-to-back home games here for the Lions, coming off their big win against the Chargers that we just talked about. What are you looking for in this one?
So the line has moved from 10.
Yeah, there you go.
10 to 7.5.
Yeah, Fields is way better.
Way better.
He's better than Tyson Bagent.
Yeah.
I mean, remember Fields' season here. The beginning of the year, we were sitting here pulling our hair out. Like, why does this look like early last year where Fields couldn't complete a pass, was getting sacked, and all the good plays were just scrambles? There was a couple weeks of that stuff, missing open receivers. And then he ran into the bad Broncos team where he had, 16 for 16 in the first half until he threw a Hail Mary. So that might have been, a fluky data point given the way the Broncos were playing at that time. Fields had a nice game against Washington on Thursday Night Football. He had played better. It was a lot like last year where a corner was turned, Not to like elite level or anything, but
yeah, he had like
good enough.
He had like 2 games where things looked like they turned around and were on the right track again, and then we got hurt and we didn't get to see anything else. So yeah, I mean, if that's what you're going to get, if Fields actually remembered how to pass the ball and put the ball in the air and not ignore wide open receivers down the field, then yeah, sure, he's way better. Particularly when you factor in the athleticism, the scrambling, which is a huge part of his game. So yeah, I mean, I'm intrigued to see now he's back. What are we going to get? Are we going to get a halfway decent version of Justin Fields? Like also. Okay, he's been limited with a thumb injury. Like the injury that he's had has been very specific in terms of there's not a lot he could have been doing there's not much practicing he kind of been doing, right? Because he can't hold the football. So, but like he's had time not in the weekly grind of game plan for the next opposition. What has he been doing to try and make himself better as a quarterback in addition to just getting his thumb to the point where he can hold a football again? Has he actually worked on anything during this time and tried to reset what was going wrong? But the Lions are a tough team now.
I just want to give a quick comparison between Fields and Bagent because they played football in the complete opposite style.
Right.
First off, Justin Fields is completing passes beyond 20 yards at a higher rate than he's completing intermediate passes at 10 to 19 yards. So the deep ball has been better for Fields than just shorter passes, which is a little bit crazy. Fields has 3 times higher big-time throw rate and a third of the turnover-worthy plays as Tyson Bagent, which might think, so Bagent's putting the ball in harm's way, but also playing this super conservative, shorter pass game, lower yards per attempt, but Bagent was also never taking sacks.
Right.
And we know the Fields narrative was, the offensive line's terrible, and the last 2 years we're like, actually, it's a little better than it looks like with Fields. And not just pressure rate, but the percentage of pressures that turn into sacks. Bagent was one of the league's best. Fields one of the league's worst. So completely different style quarterbacks. And I know it's not as simple as this, but if Fields could steal, right, we said, just watch Bagent film is what Chris was kind of talking about a few weeks ago. There are elements of take the short stuff when it's there, right? Avoid the negative plays with the sacks, but keep your aggressiveness at the right times. That's the balance I think Fields is looking for.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of elements to Bagent's game that Fields needs. Like that I think was the underlying point that Chris was making on that broadcast is like there are things that Bagent does very well that Fields is atrocious at. And if he could just take all of those to his game, he'd be a really good quarterback. Like the fact that Bagent's sack rate is absurdly low given how not great at football he is so far. Like he's been incredibly good at that. And that's not an easy thing for a young quarterback to be good at. So there is elements to that if Fields could just steal a little bit in pieces of that here or there, he would be moving in the right direction by leaps and bounds. I mean, really, I think the biggest thing though is it's the other side of the ball. Like, can the Bears slow down Detroit at all?
Yeah. So the Bears, I was actually surprised when I saw this number. Number 2 run defense, EPA per play against the Bears. There was a game a few weeks ago where the Lions did have to become one-dimensional. They didn't have David Montgomery. They had, what's his name? Craig Reynolds running the ball against Tampa Bay. They couldn't run, but Goff just dropped back 44, 45 times, and they were great. Goff's now our number 1 graded quarterback. He's playing incredibly efficient football. There's a chance if the Bears' run defense plays to that capability, can they make Detroit one-dimensional in this game? I don't know if it matters. I'm just saying there is a chance that happens. I just think the Lions are positioning themselves as that team I always describe as having multiple ways to win, and they'll have the options in the passing game. But, yeah, I think the Bears could have some success, at least slowing down David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, perhaps.
Possibly. I think they're harder to slow down when you have, those guys collectively as opposed to one guy that you just need to take away. Like Gibbs and Montgomery is more difficult than just either one of them by themselves, and certainly Greg Reynolds. But, yeah, even if you do force them to be one-dimensional, I think that's a pretty good dimension to have.
Yeah, I definitely like the Lions passing attack. I think they'll have success against this Bears back 7 and their pass rush. So 7.5 here, man. It is one of those things. I always hate picking the Bears because you just don't know when Justin Fields is going to have a 60-yard touchdown run.
Right.
Like last year. He screwed a lot of our picks last year because you didn't know when he was going to be, make superhuman plays. So where are you going with this?
I want to go with the Lions, even though it's a big number.
Yeah. I'm going to do the same. I'll take the Lions by 7.5. See what Fields looks like. Dude's playing for his job too, man. Not just his job, but he's playing for.
I don't think he's even playing for this job. I think he's playing for his next job.
Yeah, he's playing for the rest of the league. I mean, it is one of those things where I think the Bears will have somebody to pick that they'll want, and then someone else is going to want to have Justin Fields come into their building. So.
Right.
Dallas Cowboys at the Carolina Panthers. Cowboys favored by 10.5 here in Carolina. It's another week where the Cowboys are favored by double digits. Last week, the 16.5 felt small against the Giants, and it looked small at the end of the day. Can they do the same in Carolina?
Yeah, nobody beats up on bad teams better than the Dallas Cowboys. So 10.5 points is like an insult to them at this point. Look, everything that's wrong with Carolina right now doesn't feel like it gets better when you match it up with the Dallas Cowboys defense. So that, I think, immediately starts you off at a bad spot. Frank Reich resuming play calling duties, having only given them up like a month ago.
Yeah,
that feels like a pretty big. I mean, we reference this a little bit with what Buffalo is doing. You do see sometimes head coaches step in and say, "No, this is not good. I'm gonna take back control." They usually haven't given it up just a couple of weeks ago when they do that, though.
This was Matt Nagy was doing this, right? Wasn't he giving it up,
yeah,
giving it back?
So, I mean, that's a huge red flag in terms of what is happening with Carolina. Honestly, I don't think it matters the way their offense is playing at the moment. Like, it's struggling. Nobody's getting open outside of Adam Thielen. They're not scheming people open particularly well. They run the same personnel group all the time. It's like, remember when Zach Taylor's offense was doing the same thing every play? And you're like, this is just too predictable. And then Jamar Chase rocked up, and you're like, it doesn't even matter if you can predict it. You can't stop it, so who cares? Well, they don't have a Jamar Chase, or a Joe Burrow for that matter. So the being predictable part is a problem. The fact that it's 11 personnel every time, and generally speaking, they're all lining up in the same place, and that they're not doing any pre-snap motion stuff. They're not confusing you. They're just lining up and executing, and they execute badly. I mean, that against Dallas, good luck.
Yeah, it's going to be a struggle against Dallas. On the other hand, here's my weird statement of the day. I think the Panthers are the worst team in the league in a long time. Like, they're the worst team in the league right now, record-wise.
Okay.
You could argue, I don't think they're, like, when you look at that roster, it's bad. I don't look at them and, like, see, hey, they're the worst team in the league. Like, the Giants feel worse than them right now, don't they? We thought the Cardinals coming into this year felt like the team. They look like they could be tanking. The roster doesn't look great. The Panthers roster is not that bad. At one of these points, if they can just get some confidence in Bryce Young, find a few plays where he can get the ball down the field, more than one. He had one good downfield throw the other day on Thursday Night Football against the Bears. They can get a couple more of those. Let him play freer. They're not that bad. The Panthers aren't as bad as they've showed. Do you disagree? When we've seen a lot of bad, like, worst teams in the league over the years, you're like, they're just the worst team in the league. The Jags multiple times, the Jets a few times, the Cardinals in 2018. Like, there's a few teams that's just, this is by far the worst team in the league. I don't look at the Panthers and say that. I don't think you're going to see it this week. They're going to lose. They're going to lose by a lot against the Cowboys. But in this second half of the season,
I'm glad we spent time on this.
At some point, the Panthers are going to be more competitive. But this won't be the week.
Yeah.
I'll take Dallas to cover this.
Yeah, I kind of agree that they are not by far and away the worst team in the league, but they do stink. And that's kind of that's the point. And they now stink going up against Dallas, who tends to destroy stinky teams.
Really quick, so Dak is on a tear.
Yeah.
Playing great these last few weeks. So he's starting to get MVP hype because he's playing great. It's the last thing we saw. And
he doesn't have many interceptions now.
And the interceptions are down, of course. And the stats are good, which is funny because the MVP is very much a narrative-driven deal, but it's also, like we talked about before, like people look at passer rating. Unless you're a running quarterback, they look at touchdowns. And so Dak's going to have this MVP case statistically maybe in a season when he hasn't beaten any good teams, which is just interesting. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but the same people who are going to call him out for not, beating the Eagles and beating the 49ers might also say, well, look at the stats. Dak's the MVP. I mean, he played great last week, beat up on a bad Giants team. At some point down the road here, I need to see the Cowboys against good teams. But Dak's playing great ball right now.
He now has the lowest turnover-worthy play rate of his career and one of the best in the NFL after having the season of leading the league in interceptions.
Yeah, after we told everybody, like, who cares?
Yeah, and it didn't
like
just
turnover-worthy play went up down the road, down the end of the season, but like the interceptions were always an overblown narrative for Dak Prescott. Yeah. Same quarterback.
I think they will cover 10.5.
Yeah, I do too. Take Dallas. By the way, Brandon Cooks watch. If they get Brandon Cooks playing like he did last week for Dallas, they're even more dangerous than we thought. Seattle Seahawks at the Los Angeles Rams. Rematch from week 1. Seattle's favored by 1? That's it. By 1 on the road.
Stafford's back, though, right?
Like Matthew Stafford's back.
Yeah. Stafford has the lowest turnover-worthy play rate in the NFL this year. So Stafford has the lowest turnover-worthy play rate in the NFL this year. Second lowest. Jared Goff is 0.1 percentage points better. They both have 6 turnover-worthy plays. Matthew Stafford also has the highest big-time throw rate in the NFL this year, tied. No, he's 0.1 behind Dak now. Second highest. But he only has 8 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Like, nothing about his season makes any sense.
I'm annoyed. I mean, every year this stuff happens, but I'm annoyed by some of that stuff.
But usually it's one or the other. Like one number is skewing in a weird direction. Stafford, both numbers are skewing way off where he's playing at the same time in opposite directions.
And again, we would always attribute those differences to luck, likeliness.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Or sometimes it can be
supporting cast.
Yeah, but he's got Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua.
But at the same time, like one of those big time, Puka Nacua has been fantastic, but one of the big time throws was a dropped touchdown.
So that's where it becomes luck as opposed to supporting cast.
It's like where it happens and everything. But the supporting cast thing, he hasn't had Cooper Kupp for half the season. Puka and Tutu, they were doing it earlier in the season. But at the same time, they're Puka and Tutu.
Yeah, Puka, Tutu, and Cooper. It's just a weird phonetic.
What?
It's just a strange sounding group of receivers.
Matthew and Zach with a C. But we also know that the offensive line just has those games. You talk about the 45% pressure rate. There are games when they'll have an 80 pass blocking grade. There's games where they'll have a 40 pass blocking grade. And those things I think have added up.
No, definitely. It's a weird group, but there's no quarterback in the NFL right now, including everyone we talked about, Dak, Josh Allen, who has a bigger disparity between like their underlying numbers and their box score numbers than Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Who has been like balling out of his mind this year, and the numbers look completely pedestrian.
So you could say
he has a passer rating of 82.
You could say PFF grades are trash. I don't believe you. This is why your grades are terrible. You could say all that stuff. You could say whatever you want. But Stafford's on pace. If he keeps up this pace, this will be his best or second best graded season.
Matthew Stafford's passer rating is worse than Desmond Ritter's.
Yeah.
And he's been playing out of his freaking mind this year. And it's not even just like, you don't like the PFF grade and the big time throws. You go watch anybody that goes like pulls out clips and going like.
Watch some of the throws.
Right. Everyone's out there on Twitter going, Matthew Stafford is playing at an absurd level.
So that's what also makes the Rams dangerous, because I think when you're trying to explain away the production, if I use the word luck, that implies that it should work the other way. And it does. Like at some point, like Stafford's going to have a 4-touchdown game and things are going to work in his favor. Or at some point, the fact that he's, I think, playing so well, you could say he's going to regress a little bit from a playing standpoint because he doesn't always play at this level. So you could work that both ways. But I think at some point, the production should match the way he's been playing.
Right. My point was not yesterday was not to like never reference luck in connection with.
No, I've taken it to heart.
No, I know that. I'm seeing that. My point was simply specific to Josh Allen. I don't think luck is a helpful term to use because his turnover-worthy plays have been bad. And it's not like he's got unlucky. A lot of times the difference between turnover-worthy plays and interceptions is like the Matt Ryan ass pick, right? Like, that's unlucky. Generally speaking, players do not pick off the ball with their butt cheeks. Getting that to happen against you is an unlucky way to have more interceptions than turnover-worthy plays. Whereas Allen has been making some bad decisions with the ball, forcing it into windows that it shouldn't be, and he has been rightly picked off for them. It's just the rate at which that has happened has been unusually high and probably due to variance as opposed to getting unlucky.
All right, well said. You're right.
Thank you.
Boye Mafe has been tearing it up as a pass rusher for Seattle.
Yep.
Again, I feel like Seattle has that defensive line now that is capable of big games when they have the advantage against the opposing offensive line. Maybe not against the Niners, maybe not against the Eagles, but against a team like the Rams, I think the Seahawks can have some success now.
Rams receivers, comedy names though they have, going up against Seattle's defensive backs, I think is a fun matchup. Witherspoon, Reek Woolen. Like those guys going up against Bukatuku and Cooper, I think is a fun matchup.
You're just name analysis right now.
Oh, now I am. I mean, now I'm going to be using that a lot.
All right, man, where are you going with this one? Seattle at 6-3, man, sitting atop the NFC West with the 49ers.
Yeah. I'll go with Seattle winning and covering.
I'll take the Rams to cover again. I think they surprised us in week 1. I like this matchup with Seattle. They match up well with the Seahawks. It's going to be a good game. It's going to be a fun game in the 4 o'clock window. Only 3 games in this 4 o'clock window. So all eyes on that one. Plus the Jets at the Bills. Bills favored by 7 with Joe Brady coming in to make the play calls at offensive coordinator. And Zach Wilson still entrenched as the starting quarterback for the Jets. Rematch of week 1.
Really interesting game, this. So, we talked before we went live, right? This Bills thing can go one of a couple of different directions. Number one, it can be the underlying metrics are all really good. So at some point, this seemed likely to swing back in the right direction anyway. Therefore, the move looks great. Joe Brady looks great. Reputation rehabilitated. Everything's great. On the other hand, their schedule is a nightmare, and that starts with the New York Jets defense, which makes everybody look like Zach Wilson, right? So does this just look terrible again because you're going up against the Jets, who might have the best pass defense in the league?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know if I brought the next-gen stats to the table yesterday. But don't forget, Josh Allen has 8 of his 11 interceptions at night.
At night, huh?
And that same percentage of turnover-worthy plays at night. It's a day game here.
Yeah.
Big difference. Now, sunset in Buffalo. It's pretty far north.
Uh-huh.
We're post-daylight savings.
Late afternoon, mid-November.
Late afternoon start. So Allen's got about a 45-minute window.
To be good.
Before it's pitch black in Buffalo.
Gotcha.
Maybe 45 minutes. Right?
So
if they start right at 4:25. It might be earlier than that. It might be a 5 o'clock sunset.
So he's got a quarter to do his damage.
Yes. You want to get up 14-0.
Right.
Right. And then it's like, all right, he'll probably start throwing the ball to the defense.
Well, we got a quarter. So if you're Joe Brady, you've got a quarter. To dial it up, right?
You win the toss, you receive.
Yes. And then after the first quarter, you shut it down. You're only running the ball.
Correct. Okay. And actually, that was a pretty good strategy for Buffalo the other night. Their running game was...
I mean, that would have won them the game if they'd done it the first time they played the Jets.
That's true. Don't let Allen throw the ball deep.
Second Aaron Rodgers went down with his Achilles, if they ran the ball every play from that point on, they would have won.
I'm just saying that's the other part of the Allen narrative thing, is that all of his turnovers came in these island games at night. And it felt way worse. And in day games, he actually did a great job taking care of the ball.
Right.
But all of your, national analysts aren't locked in that game as much as they are. It's just hilarious anyway.
National analysts.
So Buffalo by 7.
He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He has 5 games with 0 turnover-worthy plays in them. He has 2 more games with 1. Like he had that one game against the Jets where there were 4, and then he's had 2 other games with multiple turnover-worthy plays. Outside of that,
mentally add the extra one too that we don't have properly. But yeah, those don't.
Right, multiple. But outside of that, he hasn't been that catastrophic.
No, we explained it all yesterday. Yesterday's show, which was now 2 shows ago because we had part 1 earlier today and then second show before. Okay, so anyway, I will say this: lost in the entire narrative deal. Matt Milano being hurt for the Bills has hurt their defense. Elite linebacker, great coverage linebacker. Matt Milano being out. Daquan Jones was playing elite football at defensive tackle for the Bills. Both of those guys got hurt in London against Jacksonville. That defense hasn't been the same either over these last few weeks. And I don't even care about the offensive coordinator move. Like, if you're the head coach, you need to spark something. You need to do whatever. I still think the Bills are good. They're still a good team. And now, as I said last week, replay how many times this year the Bills have been favored by 7 or more, and I picked them every single time because I think they're going to, they're capable of dominating teams. And I'm probably going to do it again. Interim offensive coordinator bump for the Buffalo Bills with Joe Brady.
Okay.
And the point I made last week stands as well. The Jets make every quarterback look like the Jets offense, passing offense, which makes them super competitive. That defense is so tough right now to throw the ball against. So I do think it'll be kind of close, but I can see Buffalo pulling away here.
One of the best pass rushes in the NFL. They don't have to send blitzers. Their linebackers are playing well. Their DBs are fantastic. The Bills' offense, I don't think, gets fixed just by firing the guy calling the plays. I think the Jets will slow down this Bills' offense. And on the other side, okay, he keeps undoing it all by like throwing the game away anyway. But Zach Wilson has played better recently. Like, he's been quite good other than the one critical, like, kneecapping play that loses them the game. Now,
I would say he's been good. Like the other day, again, he's been good in those outside of structure plays. There's just too many easy misses. There's too many plays that he's leaving on the table. That's really hurting the Jets. I know the other interesting dynamic, too, is they had an 83-yard run from Breece Hall in this game in week 1. Mm-hmm. And the Bills' run defense always kind of scares me. It's just it's kind of like the Packers last week, where I think the Packers have been good all year, but they can have games where they're just horrible. And the Bills have had those throughout the years too. And if the Jets, with Breece Hall's big playability, he might have a few more opportunities now that they release Michael Carter. I might be leaning toward the Jets here. This was also, as much as I'm defending Josh Allen on the turnover stuff, the Jets are the team where he makes more unforced errors. For whatever reason, he did it last year. He was throwing the ball to Jets in the flat. That made no sense. And that was week 1. They were unforced errors, not under pressure. He was just, for whatever reason, throwing the ball to the Jets. So, yeah, we'll see if that continues.
Yeah, I think the Jets will keep it within that line. I'm going to get them to cover.
Yeah, I'll take the Jets. You okay? What's going on over there?
Nothing. Don't worry about it.
Something I need to know about?
No. God, no.
Okay. Stream still doing well?
How many games we got left?
What do we have left?
It's like the longest podcast in the world.
We had an intermission. We've got a 4 o'clock game. We have 2 Sunday night football games.
The special game.
And we did Monday night. Oh, that's great.
That's true, yeah. We got
3 games left.
But we have and the special.
2 games plus the special.
The bonus.
Tampa Bay Bucks at the San Francisco 49ers. 49ers favored by 11.5 here. This was Brock Purdy's first start last year against the Bucks. And they dominated the Bucks last year. 11.5 point spread in San Francisco. Of course, Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams came back last week, and the Niners looked like the same.
Looked like the Niners again.
Juggernaut on both sides of the ball, really. Could have been the bye week as well. They were coming off a bye too, right? I say those without really having that confidence.
Yes, they were.
But the Niners came off a bye and fixed some things defensively because they looked pretty bad for back-to-back weeks against the Bengals and against the Vikings. So are the Niners back? It looks like it. Vegas believes that.
Yeah, reasonably so. I mean, they were dominant again, and when they looked dominant, they were, I think, as good as any team in the NFL. The Brock Purdy roller coaster this year has been fascinating, right? So coming off last season, obviously he hadn't lost in a game that he'd started and finished. His numbers were like through the roof, but some of the underlying metrics didn't look good. Like he had 5 big-time throws all of last season. This year, he started off the season playing kind of the same way as he played last year, but he kept winning because the 49ers are good. And then he had a couple of games that were really good. And now we're like talking about MVP, Tom Brady. Like the hype was getting like absolutely out of control for Brock Purdy. And then he played like crap for a week or two. And then all of that went away. And it's like, the Brock Purdy thing, it was a fraud. It's all a myth. Like everything disappeared. And then he kind of bounced back last season. But one of the things that I think is interesting is right at the time he started to play really well and the hype was getting out of control, we were like obviously tapping the brakes on that hype, but saying, hey, look, for a guy as young as he is and as inexperienced, like if he just starts playing better and, matching this kind of level, like, A, the 49ers become virtually unstoppable, but B, it is reasonable to expect that he will get better and change versus a year ago. So last season, as I said, 5 big-time throws all year, which is a big-time throw rate of 2%, which is pathetic right? That's like worse than the lowest big-time throw rate ever.
It's low.
It's pathetic. It's awful.
It's low in an offense that generally doesn't need them, but carry on.
The point being, it's terrible. It doesn't. He was not adding big-time throws to an offense, right? This year, his big-time throw rate has jumped to 5.9%, despite none of them in the first 2 weeks. So he started off the season, again, like last year, not adding those big-time throws to the table at all. Since then, has jumped to a throw rate of 5.9%, which is sixth in the league. Like, he's gone from, I'm not really adding any of these big-time throws to this offense, to all of a sudden, there are few quarterbacks adding more big-time throws to their offense than Brock Purdy this season.
Yeah, that is what makes them dangerous. I mean, last week's throw to George Kittle in a tight pocket.
Dime.
In tight coverage, right? So and that's the combination, right? Kyle Shanahan's going to have his wins. We're going to have some play call wins in this offense. You're going to have some plays where it's Shanahan plus Purdy's anticipation, right? His biggest attribute is throwing the ball early, his anticipation. And now if you add, hey, the play call's not actually that great. Kittle's not even that open, but you threw a dime and put it on him. Or for whatever we want to discuss about Purdy throwing back across his body to Brandon Ayuk, he created a play out of structure and gave his guy an opportunity to make a play. We're adding those plays to this offense. That's when the whole thing comes together and is dangerous. The few times where Purdy's gotten into trouble is fourth quarter comeback opportunities, where, again, I think he just happened to throw the ball to the defense a couple times in must-pass situations that got caught. They weren't getting caught earlier in the season. So, yeah, Niners in full strength, really dangerous. I think the Bucs, again, they've got a good run defense, but this is the type of run game where get McCaffrey in space. They're wide zone type of toss sweep game and everything. I think the Niners can have success on the ground as well. And then on the other side, the Bucs are just so dependent on Baker Mayfield getting the ball to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin still. Mm-hmm. If they don't ball out, like, they need to ball out to pull this upset.
The Bucs offense is like the worst rushing offense in the NFL. Do you know how much they are averaging before contact per rush attempt?
It might be in the negatives, but probably like 0.3.
0.5, yeah. Which is basically half a yard worse than anybody else.
It's the same thing. It was the same thing last year, and it wasn't just scheme last year. They just weren't good run blocking. And Rachaad White's interesting because I think he's a good runner at maximizing what they're. He almost feels like the opposite of Jamal Charles, where Jamal Charles would just like create these big plays. He wouldn't create after contact. He would just create these big plays. Rachaad White has impressive 4 and 5 yard runs out of nowhere. He's a very good pass catcher. Had that long screen the other day. But yeah, it's a very one-dimensional attack in Tampa Bay. It's an interesting year for the Bucs offense because like Baker Mayfield's not taking negative plays as far as sacks. He's generally taking care of the ball. He's creating some plays with his legs. I think he's just been inconsistent from an accuracy standpoint, but in certain games he gets the ball to Mike Evans and Godwin enough that they can put points on the board, and they've been better these last couple weeks. I think it's going to be a shootout, though. And if it's a shootout, Bucs have to play like they did against the Texans a couple weeks ago. It's going to be tough against this Niners D.
Yeah.
11.5, though. Where are you going?
It's a big number, but I think if the 49ers are like this when Trent Williams and Deebo Samuel are in the lineup, I'm taking them always.
Yeah. I'm going to go there, too. That's a lot of points. The Bucs aren't great, but they're not. Oh, man, I'll take the Niners still to cover it. All right, Minnesota Vikings at the Denver Broncos. Do you want to do it now or do you want to do the bonus game?
No, let's do this. We'll finish with the bonus.
All right, Sunday Night Football, Part 1. Minnesota Vikings at the Denver Broncos. Broncos favored by 2.5. Again, Sam, I'm not right about a lot of things, but one shot in the dark that I took was the Broncos defense turning it around. I know what you just saw was the worst defense in NFL history. Yeah. A defense whose EPA per play was twice as bad as the next closest team in the NFL through 5 or 6 weeks or whatever it was. And I randomly predicted they can't be this bad, right? We'll positively regress to the mean here. And they've done that. Denver's turned their defense around against the Chiefs twice and the Bills somehow.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
They're playing good defense at the moment. Like, they haven't just gone from being, it's no longer the worst defense in NFL history, it's somewhere better than that. It's actually good.
Yeah.
It's playing like one of the better defenses in the NFL. It's not, Jets or Browns, but it's a good defense right now.
You know what's also funny is at the time we said somehow the defense was so bad it masked one of the biggest stories in the NFL the last 2 years, which was Russell Wilson's decline.
Right.
And through 4 or 5 weeks, Russell Wilson wasn't that bad. Week 5 was pretty bad against the Jets, but again, everybody's bad against the Jets. Russell Wilson's decline, or the fact that he was playing better this year, got overshadowed by how bad this defense is.
Right.
Now that the defense is playing better, people are like, did you see Russ's stats? He's got 18 touchdowns and 4 picks. Did you see? Has anybody seen his stats? He's back. Russ is back. Because the defense is back. When the reality is, though, for this entire season, Russell Wilson has played better. There's certainly been some lulls where he disappears. The offense disappears. But they're grinding out the run game, and he's making a few more of those Russell Wilson type of plays, like that great throw to Cortland Sutton the other day.
Yeah, I think my favorite thing this season has been people putting Russ's and Patrick Mahomes' numbers side by side, being trying to make a point. It's just it's kind of funny. My question for this game is this the game where Josh Dobbs turns back into a pumpkin?
Ooh, that's the question, huh?
Well, I like Josh Dobbs. His story is insane. I think he's been playing well in Minnesota, really well when you factor in like the situation, right? Like he had to got thrown into a game fresh off the couch, having not even known the offense at all. And he was doing a good job in Arizona, given the circumstance. Like he had them competitive every single game. They were only competitive largely because of him, etc. But one difference. And it doesn't look like a particularly big difference because of the fumbles, but he really hasn't put the ball in harm's way in Minnesota from a passing standpoint yet, right? He has one passing turnover-worthy play so far. No interceptions, one passing turnover-worthy play. And honestly, it wasn't that egregious. It was the weird one where he threw the ball sort of into a double coverage window, and somehow Jordan Addison came out of the other side with it. Like it did go through the hands of the DB. On the other hand, it was a play where another receiver.
Nice,
yeah, it would have been a nice play by the DB. B, another receiver would have made that into more of a 50-50 ball and gone and taken it away from the DB as opposed to Addison relying on it going through the hands of the DB before he caught it. Anyway, point being, he hasn't really thrown the ball to the defense much. Whereas in Arizona, his turnover-worthy play rate was 4%. It was pretty high. He did regularly put the ball in harm's way quite a bit. With this suddenly resurgent Denver defense, is this the game where Josh Dobbs actually has a couple of passing turnovers and the Vikings offense therefore stalls?
You just love killing a good story, huh?
I'm not killing it. I'm saying it's a great story.
You're just posing the question if Josh Dobbs does.
Just asking questions.
On the other hand, where does this Josh Dobbs story go? Because the part that makes it impressive is that he just got picked up by Tennessee randomly and had to go win a must-win game, and almost did against Jacksonville last year. And he gets picked up by Arizona and just becomes the starter within 2 weeks of training camp and makes them competitive after knowing the offense for 2 weeks, and goes to Minnesota knowing the playbook and nobody's names for 3 days and wins a game with a game-winning drive.
Yeah.
And again, we like to always remind people, players don't always just get better. It doesn't, just because you did this thing before doesn't mean you'll keep getting better. But will this actually get better for Josh Dobbs as he knows the offense more? And he's in Kevin O'Connell's done a really good job in Minnesota. Say what you want about luck and likelihood and one-score games and everything. Like, Kevin O'Connell's done a really nice job there. And is this actually going to go the other way? He doesn't have Justin Jefferson yet, and Jefferson's going to be coming back. Is this actually going to go the other way? And Dobbs is going to play like a top 10 to 15 quarterback for the foreseeable future. And all of a sudden, Minnesota is a really dangerous team. This is a great matchup on Sunday night that looked like a horrible matchup.
Right.
Chris and Mike are probably like, oh, man, we're going to be flexing this one in a few weeks. When both teams are sitting there at like 1-8 combined. But here we are, and this is an awesome game from two teams who are playing really well.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I think that's different from Minnesota this year than previous years is the offensive line is no longer a problem. Like, for years, that Vikings offensive line had been an issue, particularly the interior. Christian Darrisaw as a first-round pick, like he's an all-pro caliber left tackle. That's a great move for them. He's a dominant force. Brian O'Neill has been one of the better right tackles in the league since they got him. So the tackles are actually in good spot. But that interior, at least on paper, still looked like an issue, whether it's Austin Schlottman at center, Garrett Bradbury at center. They've gone between Dalton Reisner at guard. Ed Ingram is still there at the other guard spot. Like, that still doesn't look good on paper, but it's actually played pretty well, on paper. It hasn't been a problem at all. And then you add in the Josh Dobbs scrambling factor and rushing threat, like the ability of him to actually carry the ball as part of a designed run game. And sure, they're down running backs. Like I think they're out of running back. Like Ty Chandler is going to be the running back singular for Minnesota this week because he's the only healthy one they have, I think. But that combination means they can run the ball better than they've ever run it before. Because the offensive line works, because they have Dobbs as a factor, and the pass protection is good. Like they're top 5 in pass blocking efficiency as a line. Where are they? 9th. So top 10, which is way higher than they've ever been in the last few years.
Yeah, and the other part about Minnesota's story this year, I was intrigued by the guys that they... like the underrated players that they've essentially invested in. Cameron Bynum at safety and Josh Metellus as that hybrid safety linebacker type player. Those guys are playing well. And remember, we said they lost a lot of name talent and it looked like a no-name defense that had no chance, but Brian Flores has done a great job on that side of the ball. After they started slow, they figured some things out. So, yeah, Minnesota, they're hot. They're trending in the right direction. To answer your question about Dobbs, though, to come back, I wanted to give a little counter argument. I don't know how good Dobbs is going to be. There's a chance he's not that great, right? He's an awesome story. There's a chance he's not that great, and he will regress at some point. We'll see what happens here, though. Plus, Denver on the other side, they're leading into that run game a little bit. They're getting enough of that Russell Wilson magic. Like the formula kind of looks a little bit like the Seahawks days with Russ. Making a few special plays, not carrying the team, just playing efficient, clean ball, making a fourth quarter comeback when you need them. I think that stuff coming together, and maybe, look, we wrote off Sean Payton early in the year too, and it took a little time, but I think he's getting this team back on track as well.
I mean, lost a little bit in that incredible Cortland Sutton toe tap touchdown catch. The throw was really good. Like that was a beautiful drop into a bucket.
He used to do that to Tyler Lockett all the time, and it felt like, well, only Tyler Lockett's going to make these catches.
Yeah.
And he still does.
But sometimes you get those plays, where we only focus on one element of it. It's like, wow, that was an incredible piece of toe tapping skill. Like one of the best sideline catches, certainly this year and probably for a couple of years. So we don't even think about anything else that happened on that play. You're like, that's actually an absolute dot to drop that into the bucket where only he can catch it and only leaning half a yard over the sideline.
I would say this might be anecdotal, but I also feel like last year when Russ always felt like he was going to, put a little move on a player or whatever, and he just couldn't do it anymore. I feel like that's happening less often.
He does look visibly more athletic again.
Right? It still happens at times, right? There was a busted play the other day. He tried to do too much and got sacked. But he is at least able to make the first man miss a little bit more often than last year. Again, it's not perfect. It's not like prime Seattle Seahawks Russell Wilson, but it's an efficient Russell Wilson in this Peyton offense where I think they're kind of finding their groove. I'm loving this game on Sunday Night Football. Where are you going to go with this one? Denver's favored by 2.5 here.
I believe Denver will win and cover.
So here I am buying into the Josh Dobbs. Yeah, I'm going to buy into the Josh Dobbs narrative. Minnesota on the road getting 2.5. They're hot. Not that it matters. Being hot doesn't matter. Bengals were hot last week. Doesn't matter at all. But I'll take Minnesota as the underdogs here.
Okay.
One final game to discuss because we already did Monday Night Football on the Part 1 show. It's the Grey Cup, 6 p.m. Eastern, Sunday night. The other Sunday night matchup. They're going head-to-head with the NFL here, the Grey Cup. They always do it.
Now, why are we doing the Grey Cup?
I accidentally put it into the schedule because we're grading the CFL here at PFF. We have CFL coverage. We have CFL grading. And when I copy the games into our podcast document, we have a running list of every game we're going to grade this weekend at PFF. So it's like a Thursday night game, then there's a whole bunch of college games and the NFL games, and right dead smack in the middle of it's the Grey Cup. So I figured I'd just drop it right in here. And you went and did a nice job of finding the line. So it's the Winnipeg Blue Bombers.
It wasn't easy, by the way. Like that's.
Oh, really?
It's not just sitting there available to be had. You have to go and like.
We don't have CFL Green Line yet.
It took multiple Google searches, inputs to get that line.
Is it in Canadian?
I don't know.
Is it adjusted for Canadian?
I don't know if they have. I don't know if they do their lines in metric.
So we have the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Montreal Alouettes.
Yeah.
And Winnipeg is favored by 7.5 here. What are you looking for in this game?
Well, the last time they met was in Week 12, and the Bombers hammered the Alouettes 47-17, which not only, as you see, easily covers a 7.5-point spread, but would also have got you the over in that game as well, and the over in this game if it came true. The second last time they played, they also won, albeit in a much closer encounter. When you factor that in with the fact that they also have a much better PFF grade as a team, I can't see any other way this game goes than a Winnipeg Blue Bomber beatdown of the Montreal Alouettes.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
I'll go the other way, though. I think
Okay.
Montreal, behind, let's see here, Cody Fajardo as their former Nevada quarterback.
Okay. Do we know any of the players on any of these teams?
I'm looking them up. The highest graded player on Montreal is Nick Callender, offensive tackle from the 2017 draft class. I'll tell you what, if people were with PFF years ago,
Yeah.
and they old takes exposed me
Yeah.
with my Gary Peters take,
Grabby.
who just lost in the semifinals, unfortunately.
Grabby lost?
Gary Peters' team lost in the semifinals. But Gary was an early PFF favorite, 2014, great grade for Clemson. I've been told he may have gone to Canada for reasons other than football, okay? And that's why he went undrafted. But listen, this year, a top 5 graded defensive player in the CFL. Last year, among the best as well. Gary Peters, we nailed it. When I said Gary Peters is a legit NFL talent, I was right. He just happens to be doing it in the CFL.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true. The Alouettes have Austin Mack.
Oh, yeah. Austin Mack.
Yeah, I liked him.
Let's see. Highest graded player on Winnipeg. Oh, they look loaded.
Austin Mack's a baller. This doesn't change my opinion. I think they'll still lose, but it makes it more interesting.
Zach Caleros at QB.
Now, who have Winnipeg got? They got anybody that I care about?
Winnipeg, Zach Caleros. Can't get his player page to load here.
All right, here we go.
Get his CFL player page.
This is
here.
great content.
This is beautiful
We're
content.
just reading through the CFL
People
rosters.
stuck with this. Caleros, former Cincinnati Bearcat here, 86.8 grade for Winnipeg this year. They play a 21-game schedule. No, it's 21 weeks, but they don't play all those games. Anyway.
No, there's nobody on their roster I care about. So, even though
At Winnipeg,
yeah,
Kenny Lawler at receiver.
No.
Cal, he was one of Jared Goff's receivers at Cal.
no, the only player I have any remote interest in this entire game is Austin Mack. That's it.
Willie Jefferson, long edge defender from Baylor, I believe. Let's see. Yeah. Ended up at Stephen F. Austin,
Yeah.
but via Baylor. So there's a player for Winnipeg. Yeah, I like Winnipeg. I'm with you. They'll
They
cover-
have Jackson Jeffcoat.
Jackson Jeffcoat, former Texas star. How about that?
right.
So there's your Grey Cup analysis. You take Winnipeg, I'll take Montreal. We'll break it down Monday morning.
Okay.
that's it.
Well, it's a bonus one. You gotta.
I'm going to make a pick, yeah.
Yeah.
What's the abbreviation? MTL?
MON probably right.
MTL. Montreal.
MTL.
Well, that's it for part 2 of the Week 11 NFL preview. Again, a reminder, we'll just be doing our preview on Wednesday next week. We'll go through all the games. So 3-show week next week. All right, let's get out of here. It's been a long day. Thanks to everybody for tuning in to both episodes. Apologize for the technical difficulties on the YouTube live stream, but we'll be again. You'll be here tomorrow talking about Thursday Night Football, and I'll be back here on Monday reviewing the games. We'll see you then.